James just sent me. Oh, my hair looks goofy as fuck. But James just sent me a video that someone did reviewing one of our things, and it's interesting.
So I'm going to do a little analysis of the response video that Nathan made about my refutation of all 500 plus arguments against Christianity. So let's just get straight into it.
My first criticism then is just going to be that evidently mine and James's video is embedded in a context of various YouTube channels existing and the kind of content that they put out. I mean, it's clearly a response to Capturing Christianity, which is a very big channel in YouTube, in the world of YouTube apologetics, with over 100,000 subscribers.
Okay, I don't see how this is really important to my refutation. Every video on YouTube has the context of videos on YouTube. Every philosophical video on YouTube has the context of philosophical videos on YouTube. Every religious video on YouTube has the context of religious videos. Every atheistic video on YouTube has the context of atheistic videos on YouTube. And what does that add to the conversation? What does it add to understanding or critiquing my all-in-one refutation of your 500 arguments? Perhaps, Nathan, if you listen to this, you can explain that to me.
I mean, fair enough. It's 7 and a bit hours, coming up to 8 hours. So, I mean, it's not that you have to memorize everything we say and respond to it, something like that. But there are clearly several meta points that we're making about how stupid it is to argument count, to count deductive arguments in favor of one position.
Sure, that's incredibly stupid to count the arguments that you can come up with, because everyone can come up with an infinite number of arguments. You can always add one, right? So it won't be an actual infinity, but it will be a series to which you can always add one. So yeah, I agree 100%. I don't see the relevance of that.
Because firstly, if we're talking about deductive arguments, someone can always just, basically take the opposite, run the argument the other way. And someone can always count more than you. And that is the meta point that we were making. And then we were doing so with our autistic fervor.
Okay, well, I like autistic people. I think they're entertaining, they're lovable, they're innocent for the most part. I've been accused of having autism and I've been diagnosed, but this is all neither here nor there. Okay, we need to get into the meat and potatoes of the actual arguments. And I forget what he said. I'm gonna just rewind a little bit here, because I just forgot what he said at the beginning of this.
Firstly, if we're talking about deductive arguments, someone can always just, basically take the opposite, run the argument the other way.
Right. Well, I don't think that that's the case. You can't just reverse deductive arguments to argue for the opposite. That's nonsense. This is why I said that you are using bad logic, because that it just doesn't work that way. Deductive reasoning helps us to arrive at the truth given true premises. And a sound and valid argument can arrive at a necessarily true conclusion, right? So we're going to have to get into the actual argument that I made, so we'll see what he says about that.
And this guy just sounds like a prick.
Okay, so still haven't got onto the topic of the actual argument. He's just evaluating me based on my face, hair, wardrobe, setting, decor, and you'll see all that later. That's how he thinks.
Like that, his response so far is like, oh, it's so inane. Like, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with the guy. Like, I mean, I don't think me or James are idiots. I think James is probably quite a bit smarter than me. He's got several degrees in several subjects, right? So he's really good at philosophy and the sciences. I think he's got a well thought through worldview. I think if you compare me to your average person, I'm doing marginally better. I mean, I've read a lot of philosophy. I don't think I've just got like an inane worldview, right?
Your worldview is inane. And it doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter how smart you are academically, okay? Or at the natural sciences. You will never be as smart as Satan or his demons. It's not academic skills or scientific knowledge that saves you, right? It's humility that saves you. So it's completely irrelevant how many degrees you have and how much book knowledge you have. Is completely irrelevant. If anything, it would cloud your judgment when it comes to making a decision that will affect your eternal outcome, because Jesus said, let the little children come to me. You have to be like one of these little ones. You have to be pure and innocent. So comparing your resumes and your academic achievements with mine might make you feel good, but that's about all you're going to get. And as Jesus would say, you've already had your reward here below. If that's what you're going for, then you're selling your soul extremely cheap. Just the thrill of saying, I have more education than David Ross up in Montreal, Quebec, Canada in the year 2021. You're selling your soul way too cheap if that's the thrill that you're willing to enjoy in exchange for your eternal soul. It's just absurd.
And I think on any given point that we could talk about it, have something informed to say about it, particularly in philosophy of religion, which I'm interested in.
Yeah, you can have a lot to say, but I mean, the refutation that I made wasn't about you and your character and your education. The refutation I made was that if you're going to sit there and, as an atheist, try to make arguments to prove that God doesn't exist, that's a self-defeating project. You're contradicting yourself. You're assuming the opposite of your conclusion. You're assuming that God exists, that we live in a well-ordered universe, that there's meaning, that one configuration of matter, energy, and space-time is superior in some way or other to another configuration of matter, energy, and space-time. You're assuming that your judgments are meaningful, and that when you think that something is more or less convincing or more or less logical, that has some objective and eternal meaning. In other words, you're making judgments, whether those are judgments of truth or goodness or beauty or whatever it is. You're making judgments, and those judgments are necessarily either A, objective, eternal. They're made with reference to a standard which is objective, eternal, unchanging, and absolute, or option B, not A. And there is no middle way, either A or not A. So either you're bowing to that standard, you're worshiping, meaning giving worth to, recognizing the worth of that standard, which is God, in which case, welcome to monotheism, or not A. You don't have a standard by which you judge it. You don't have a standard which is absolute. You just have a standard which is mired hopelessly in relativism. Your standard of truth and goodness is not eternal, it's just temporary. Here today, gone tomorrow. Your standard of truth and goodness is not objective, it's merely subjective. And it's not unchanging, it's subject to change. So how can I take the atheist's judgments seriously? Well, I take them seriously if those judgments are made with reference to a standard that is immutable, absolute, objective, and eternal. Because at that point, I'm not talking with an atheist at that point, right? So you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to have the standard by which to judge meaningfully. And then you want to turn around and say that that standard does not exist. Am I really the only one that sees the absurdity in that and the self-contradiction that's entailed in that? I just don't get it, these atheists, these so-called atheists, because I don't know if they are really atheists. So I call them so-called atheists because I was calling myself an atheist for 25 years, but I came back to God, and I really to this day don't know if I ever truly believed that God did not exist. I struggle with that to this day.
So maybe you should point. I mean, I think if you're going to accuse someone of having only making inane points, then you should probably have at least one example to hand.
Every single one of your arguments, 500 plus, all of them are inane, and I'm going to show you that. I'm going to do a whole series. I don't care how long it takes. I'll just go bit by bit, make a playlist. It'll accumulate over the next couple of months, probably, because I'm going to do other things in the meantime. My whole life doesn't revolve around the atheist and their inane arguments, but I will make a series. I'm starting right now with this episode, which is episode 0, the introduction. And I can refute every single one of your arguments, and not only that, but everything that you say. Everything that you say, doesn't matter if it's an argument for atheism, or if it's an argument against God, or if it's an argument against Christianity, or if it's just, hey, pass the salt at dinner. Whatever you think, whatever you say, whatever you do, it's all inane to the extent that you deny the existence of your creator. It's all absurd and inane, all of it. If you do an interpretive dance, I don't care how elegant and beautiful it is, it's inane because you deny your creator, to the extent that you deny your creator, because that really is the question at hand here. Do you really deny that standard of truth, goodness, beauty, justice? It doesn't seem that way because you're very eager to make judgments, very, very, very willing and seemingly able to make all these judgments, unless you want to just admit that your judgments have zero weight, zero meaning, because they're just mired in relativism, subjectivism, and they're here today, gone tomorrow, and they are completely and utterly subject to change, constant flux for that short amount of time that they have existence. So you'll have to make up your mind about that. The jury's out on that.
And then I think there's the whole thing of, you sort of get a sense of this guy's attitude from the way that he's talking about things, which I find a bit creepy and weird to begin with. And the sense I get from that attitude is that his opinion of what's inane is going to be very different from mine, and I think very different from most normal people's as well.
Congratulations, you're normal. Enjoy it. You've had your reward, I guess. So enjoy being normal, but enjoy being in the majority if that's the case. Are you in the majority? Are you normal? Are you at the center of the bell curve? Is that the place to be? Is it the place to be, at the center of the bell curve? Is it really? when it comes to seeking truth? Is it best to be the hump, in the middle of the hump of the bell curve? Is that what you think? Is that what you're going to say? That it's best to be normal in the quest for truth? This is your analysis after having studied philosophy, that it's best to be with the pack, the group, in the middle of the pack, with average opinions. That's your conclusion. After all your study, all your reading, all your meditation, all your thoughts. That's what you come up with. Well, if that's the place that you are situated and you think that that's a privileged place, then enjoy it. I'm not interested in being normal. When it comes to seeking truth, I want to go where the truth leads me, no matter how uncommon, no matter how inconvenient. That may be the difference between the theist and the non-theist. Are you a follower? Are you just a member of the pack? Do apes travel in packs and groups? I don't know. I'm ignorant of a lot of natural science. I'm not that interested in natural science. Why? Because natural science can't save my soul. So we're coming at life from very, very, very different perspectives in terms of what's essential. What is the meaning of life? What would you say, Nathan, what would you say is the meaning of your life? I'm very, very interested and curious to know what you would say about that. Very curious.
I'm not getting the sense of because he's so much more educated or he spent his whole life in like Oxford University or something, but I think I'm getting because you're up your own arse point of view.
Okay, so you would have more respect for me if I had degrees from Oxford. But because I don't have degrees from Oxford, for example, I'm up my own ass, which means what? Which means I'm full of myself, I'm arrogant, I'm smug, condescending, mean, I don't play nice with so-called atheists. Is that what you mean? Because you, Nathan, you were claiming to have been at one time a Christian in love with your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Correct me if I'm wrong. You did make that claim. I have it on tape, okay? So I think it's natural that when I see your journey, your spiritual journey, going from Christian, ostensible Christian, to hard agnostic, meaning that you doubt absolutely everything but your own existence, and then on to some sort of what appears to be entrenched atheism, proud of your intellect, proud of your decision to be a non-theist, an atheist, an agnostic, or whatever your label is. I don't know what your label is today. It's in constant flux, right? What are your core principles today, Nathan? What are your core principles today? In my first interview, you were ostensibly a Christian. There are core principles involved in being a Christian. In your next interview, you were claiming to be a hard agnostic. There are very, 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 very few principles involved in being an agnostic. The problem is now you're not agnostic, you're not Christian. You are what appears to be an atheist. And the problem with atheism is that you've introduced new principles into your worldview. You've accepted as axiomatic, you've accepted a whole bunch of principles. Are they fixed? Are they constantly changing and evolving? I'm really curious to know, but you haven't responded to my emails lately. You may be busy, or you may just hate me because I'm Christian. You may hate me because my opinion doesn't agree with yours. You may not like my shirt, my hairdo or my decor in my room, that's fine. You don't have to like me. But if you love the truth, if you claim to love the truth, if you claim that you are seeking the truth, then why not discuss the truth? Why not explore? Why not be challenged by someone that obviously sees the world differently, very differently? I don't get it.
It's just so fucking like. So you get all this chest thumping rhetoric right at the start of, oh, this is so inane, I'm so smart, I've got it all figured out, I'm gonna just go ahead and refute them all, and then you just get a complete fucking moronic statement.
I don't recall saying that I'm so smart. All your arguments are inane. That's a given. That's a given. And I'm going to go through all of your arguments in this series of videos. All of your arguments are inane. Guaranteed, 100%. I haven't even listened to all of them, but they're all inane. The ones I have listened to are inane. I'll say it again. They're inane. One more time. They're inane. This is goading your pride. Your pride is so raw. It's glistening with sweat and blood and tears and God knows what. You are a hot mess, to put it bluntly. You're a hot mess. Because you can't handle the idea of being challenged intellectually. You think... I never claimed to be smart. I don't think I'm smart. When people ask me how smart I am, I say I'm probably of average intelligence. I put myself in the middle of that bell curve because I don't need to be intelligent to go to heaven. But I need to know the truth. To know the truth, I need to seek the truth. And if I do seek the truth, I will find the truth. And that's what's been happening. In 2009, I was an atheist. And then because of my search for truth, I became a monotheist. And it can happen to you. Obviously, you've never been a monotheist. That's obvious, Nathan. When I interviewed you the second time, I asked you what kind of analogy can we make using the mail order catalog for ordering women from Russia. Was Jesus not the bride that you expected? Was he not all you hoped he would be? Were you deceived by the hair, the makeup, the clothing, the decor? All these things that you seem to be fixated on with me in my videos? Or was there something about Jesus's character, about his story, about his nature? Did you love Jesus Christ? Yes or no? Did you ever really know him? And did you ever really love him? And did you ever really give yourself to him? Did you give yourself entirely to him? As a bride does to her bridegroom. Have you ever done that? I say no. I say no, you haven't. Because you don't walk away from that. You don't forget about that. You don't explain that away. Have you ever loved? Have you loved a woman? Have you ever loved your parents? Have you loved your siblings? Have you loved your pet dog? Have you ever loved? Do you know what love is? If you know what love is, then welcome to monotheism. That's all I can say.
This is why engaging in this space, I need to have more of like a Doug approach where I just find it funny and pathetic, but it is... I mean, how can you be that thick? How can you be that fucking thick?
I laugh because my wife calls me Doug. That's her nickname for me, Doug. And my nickname for her is Doug. So we call each other Doug. And so I laughed out loud when he said he should adopt Doug's attitude. Just laugh it off when people are stupid, when theists are stupid. Saying silly nonsense. He's having a hard time believing his ears. Nathan is really struggling here. He's never been confronted with such raw truth. This cuts to the chase. This cuts to the quick. This goes right to the root of the issue. Why atheism is inane. I'm only using that word because it obviously got a rise out of Nathan. He seemed really aggravated by that. So we need to goad the atheist. The reason God allows suffering in the world is because it's what saves us. It's salutary. It's salvific. Brings us to repentance. That's the primary reason God allows evil and suffering in the world. It brings us to repentance. If we have our wits about us, if we are like a child. So Nathan's mind is blown, apparently, by the reaction he's giving. The reaction he's giving is I don't want to say entertaining, but it's noteworthy. Let's put it that way. It's interesting. Very, very emotional. So let's see if we can go a little bit deeper with the actual arguments.
But my problem is I engage. I suppose part of the meta critique I wanted to make in doing this short video, just kind of watching it and responding off the cuff, is that there's so many crazy people in this space, so many like bad reasoners and people who, I don't know, like life's hurt them or something's gone wrong. And so for some weird reason, a part of their response to that is to like believe in the flat earth or not believe in the vaccine or think that taking like Alex Jones's testosterone meds are going to like fix them up or something. And for some strange reason, for some of these people, it seems to be like a kind of conservative disposition towards life, which comes with being religious and adopting all the religious tropes and attitudes and things like that.
Okay, so touch on a few points here. He made reference to some people being crazy, not being able to reason properly. So that implies God because it implies that some people reason better than others. Try, if you really think you're smart, try to explain that to me in simple, easy to understand terms. Explain it to me how it is possible that one configuration of matter, energy, and space-time is better than any other configuration of matter, energy, and space-time. Explain that to me from your philosophical basis of your worldview. Explain that to me. I've encountered so many so-called atheists online, particularly on the Atheist Experience video that I did, the call that I did. So many so-called atheists. I've extended this challenge to so many of them, and it's crickets. It's crickets. The other point with the insanity, the craziness of people, right-wing, crazy right-wing people, and all the people that are crazy, they tend to go to the right wing. Really? Do you live in a predominantly right-wing neighborhood, in a predominantly right-wing city, in a predominantly right-wing part of England? I've been to England. I've lived in England. It wasn't right-wing when I was there. Spent over a year there. Wasn't right-wing. Okay. Where are you? I mean, I'm curious to know, where are you? You could go 10 steps in any direction and you'll find yourself surrounded by left-wing, predominantly left-wing people. So why are you stuck in some right-wing enclave with a bunch of crazy right-wing people? I don't get it. The whole world, it seems to me, is dominated today by people on the left. That's my impression. I'm neither left nor right. If you watch any of my episodes on my channel, not any of them, but if you watch my videos, you will eventually discover that I hate the ideology of the right more than I hate the ideology of the left. I just published a video talking about the miscarriage rate among vaccinated, so-called vaccinated people. And I called the people that are on BitChute, like Alex Jones, these types of people, extreme right-wing conspiracy theorists, because that's what they seem to be. And with the particular context of the spontaneous abortion results from that preliminary study from the New England Journal of Medicine, they were reckless and irresponsible, if not outright evil, lying about their interpretation of the data of that study, that preliminary study. So I put them in their place, but I also put the New England, the actual so-called scientists and doctors that published that article, that preliminary study, in their place as being on the left, because they twisted the data to their benefit. And then I gave my Catholic perspective, which is a perspective that seeks the truth. I'm not into politics. I'm not into the right. I'm not into the left. I'm into Jesus Christ and his church. So if you've never been a Christian, you may not be able to relate to my particular point of view, but I am not into the right or the left.
And then a part of like justifying that when it comes into conflict and tension with the way that most normal people think about reality is to fall into apologetics and develop like, I mean, some people go down the Catholic route, and I've seen this several times, where they start thinking about things that like they just never would have come across on their own if it wasn't preserved within this Catholic tradition, like Thomism and stuff like that.
Okay, so we're only supposed to develop our own thoughts independent of any other geniuses that came before us. Not supposed to read books, and I guess what he initially said is that a lot of these crazy right-wing people tend to go into Catholicism, and that's where they get all these wacky ideas that they never would have encountered. Well, I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. I belong to a religion that emphasizes revelation. It emphasizes submission to a living magisterium that draws on the sacred deposit of faith. That means sacred scripture and sacred tradition, and it's a rich heritage, intellectually and otherwise, that I have to draw on. It would be foolish, and it would be anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, to consciously make a decision to avoid that richness, that wealth of wisdom and knowledge. What is your point, Nathan? What is your point? I said that all arguments imply God, therefore all of your arguments are inane. And all you're talking about is that I'm crazy, I'm a right-wing guy, and that I read a bunch of books and it filled my head with Catholic Thomism and this sort of thing. You're not addressing the issue. Everything you say just makes your position worse, because if you're trying to say that your point of view is better than mine, you've already lost. It's too late.
And then they develop this sort of complicated vocabulary and...
Okay, just more of the same, the vocabulary. Okay, next.
But then they just make leaps of reasoning. Like, I can see how someone can believe in Catholicism, and I can see how there are arguments in favor of it, right? And I'm self-aware enough in order to be able to actually step out of my belief system and see that someone else has a belief system. So it might be the case, right, that for someone who believes in God's existence, and they've got a particular sort of web of beliefs, a particular kind of metaphysics of reality that they think is the case, and it might follow from that kind of structure of reality that in order to have intelligibility or something, like a necessary condition is God's existence, right? But I'm self-aware enough to see that that is just an alternative model of reality to the one that I currently believe in for whatever reasons.
Okay, Nathan, are you saying that I'm not self-aware enough to know that atheists have a different model of the universe and a different model of life and a different model of metaphysics and epistemology and all the rest? Are you saying I'm not self-aware enough to know that? I just told you, and I told you during my interviews, I was atheist for most of my adult life, for 25 years of adult life. From the age of 14 to 39, I was an atheist. I had a worldview. A lot of it was coherent. I don't think it corresponded with reality, though. There's more to truth theories than just the coherence truth theory, right? There's the correspondence theory of truth. That's equally important, if not more important. You can have a perfectly coherent system that doesn't correspond with reality. It's not worth much. So I do understand your point of view because I was atheist. I was an agnostic. I was a pantheist. I was all kinds of things. It's completely beside the point, and it's completely ridiculous to suggest that I can't even grasp another worldview. It's completely ridiculous. I was an atheistic Satanist. I was a heart solipsist at one point. So where are you getting your data? Where are you getting your insider information on my personality, on what I went through as a child, on what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling? You know, you're going to psychoanalyze me? All I'm saying is that if you're arguing, then you've lost as an atheist. The atheist can't argue because arguing is self-contradictory for the atheist. Because if it implies meaning, if it implies something that's actually objectively and eternally and absolutely true or good or beautiful or just, and otherwise it just doesn't matter. It literally does not matter what you say, think, or do. It doesn't matter.
I mean, I could just say, well, you don't know that God exists because I know he doesn't, right? That's just the worst argument in the world.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad one. But like I said, deduction doesn't work that way. You can't just invert a deduction. There are reasons why the rational human being must conclude that God exists. There are good reasons. Have you not encountered these reasons in your studies? When you were a Christian, were you not aware of these reasons? For the certainty that we have, that we can have potentially, if we're honest with ourselves. If we're honest with ourselves, we have the potential to discover reasons for the necessary existence of God. Have you not discovered these as a philosopher or even as a Christian? It's embarrassing. I find it extremely embarrassing. I don't know what to say. I'm just going to continue to refute your 500 arguments, and hopefully you'll watch my refutations, or some of them, and you'll wake up before it's too late, because once you're in hell, there's nothing you can do. You can't study, you can't read, you can't even think straight. So wake up. That's my advice.
So Anseps in the chat says, nothing useful is achieved by flinging insults back and forth. I mean, you're right. It's natural to want to feel, but it's just so ridiculous.
Okay, so he's apparently, Nathan, you think you're justified in saying my perspective is ridiculous, but that's exactly what you're angry about, is that I think your perspective is ridiculous. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's just like there's a certain symmetry that we have on that one particular point. I think you're wrong. You think I'm wrong. I think you're ridiculous. You think I'm ridiculous. I think this should be a given. We don't even need to waste breath talking about that, right?
So, I mean, what follows from the fact that arguments exist? So arguments is a word, right? That word means something. So I hear the word arguments, and I don't know, I think of maybe some particular things that I would consider to be arguments, maybe some features of arguments, like premises, conclusions, inference, that sort of thing. But nowhere in the content of that meaning is the word God.
We all know what an argument is. We all know. It could be a philosophical argument. It could be an argument between husband and wife over the most trivial thing. There are different kinds of arguments, but the essence is that we're trying to convince the other using right reason. We don't have access to the beatific vision here below, most of us. So we have to select among relative goods. We have to build a case using the available goods, the goods that are available. Life is complicated. And like I said, we don't have access to the ultimate good here below. In this finite world, we have access to relative goods. Our judgment about which good is higher than the other good is debatable, and we need to work this out with fear and trembling. I don't care if it's how to roll the toothpaste up or if it's the existence of God. We have to compare and contrast ideas in an attempt to get closer to the truth. That's what arguing is, right? Unless you want to resort to some sort of perverted definition of arguing where you just want to bash someone over the head in order to exert power. Right? You might have a worldview that reduces all power to power over, like Foucault says. You might have some ridiculous psychological interpretation of everything, or some feminist interpretation of everything, or I don't know. There are all kinds of silly, nuanced worldviews. I don't know exactly what you believe. But arguments are reasoning in an attempt to get closer to the truth. Either you yourself, you're uncertain, so you argue with yourself and others to try to formulate and clarify ideas for yourself, or you have a certain amount of certainty and confidence and you're helping another, helping your brother to get closer to the truth. You could still be wrong. But there is a hierarchy among the truths, even for each individual. There's a hierarchy. There are things that cannot be doubted. There are many other things that can be doubted to various different degrees. And so we have to discover that hierarchy, be aware of that hierarchy, and use the most fundamental and certain truths that we can to build a coherent worldview that corresponds as much as possible with reality. I admit that I'm wrong about most things, but I also know that there are many things that I know with certainty, and the existence of God is one of those. That is the utmost certainty that I have about anything, beyond even the knowledge of my own existence, is the existence of God. So I don't know what you have as your foundation. What are your principles? Curious.
Now, he could be saying that, well, a necessary condition or a necessary precondition, right, is that God exists in order to be able to have arguments. But he's not actually given us any reasons to think that is the case. He's just asserted it.
No, I gave the reason. The reason is free will. The reason is truth. The reason is beauty. The reason is unity. The reason is justice. The reason is goodness. You're making reference to all these. You're judging with reference to some standard, which is, like I said, either absolute, eternal, immutable, and objective, or not. Either way, I win, because either you're a monotheist, congratulations, or what you're saying has no meaning, period.
So the first criticism is that it's not like this kind of clear logical entailment, like 2 + 2 = 4, right? Or I'm a man and I'm wearing slippers, therefore I'm wearing slippers, right? That's just a clear logical entailment. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly like that. It's exactly that. Arguing logically entails truth, goodness, beauty, justice, harmony, peace, everything. All the transcendentals. Necessarily. Do you want to sit there with a straight face and tell me that you could approach the truth while leaving behind peace, health, and beauty? This is not rocket science, folks. It's not rocket science.
It seems to be more like a kind of inference that he's making, but he's not given us any argument yet or reason to suppose that that inference is right.
Okay, I'm just going to continue because I don't know anything to say.
And even if he does, I mean, what's to prevent someone who just disagrees with him from just giving a different story, right? And then we just have to compare the virtues of the story. And it seems to me like a story that doesn't necessitate postulating some random theoretical entity that seems to have nothing to do with arguments whatsoever, or any of the things referred to by arguments, is going to be a better theory on that account.
I just have to repeat myself again and again and again and again. It's tiresome. It's wearying. When you argue, when you make an argument, when you make your case, when you reason, you're taking it for granted that your judgments are made with reference to a standard. And either that standard is objective, eternal, unchanging, and absolute, in which case, welcome to monotheism, or not, in which case, whatever, dude, whatever.
Because it's not like he's going to disagree that that there are like people and maybe like minds and thoughts and inferences being made. He's going to agree to all those things. So as long as you can just come up with a model that has all those like natural features of an argument and then just doesn't have this random, it's just very silly.
It's silly, right? Okay. Nathan, do you have any basis in philosophy, the natural sciences? Can you justify your belief in that list, that laundry list that you gave, the other's thoughts, the other's words, the other's deeds, whatever it is? It's all this stuff that's happening in a conversation or an argument, right? You're pointing to these manifest realities, right? Are you believing in all of this because you're ultimately a naive realist? Is that the foundation? Is that the foundation of your worldview? Naive realism, like, oh, well, it seems like there's this world and there's the other and sense perceptions and all that. Is that your basis, really? That's not a basis, right? If you want to justify philosophically your worldview, then you're going to have to deal with the alleged sense perceptions. I don't care if you can list all the wacky and weird schools of thought in the history of Western philosophy. I've got an overview of it. I've been through the gamut. There are people today writing books, filling bookshelves with all kinds of wild speculation, right? But when it comes right down to it, are you able to justify philosophically the existence of the material world and the other? If you are, Nathan, if you have a basis, I think you should share it with me, because I haven't been watching your videos. I don't know anything about you other than when you were on my show, you were first a Christian and then an agnostic. That's all I know about you. So I could go and watch all your videos and try to discover who you are, but I thought I'd just send you an email, which I did, asking you to come on and share your ongoing journey with me and my listeners. That's the most efficient, pragmatic approach. If you and I want to discuss ideas and approach the truth together, that's the way we should do it. If you want to just critique me because you don't like my hairstyle, you don't like my t-shirt, I wore the same one today just to bug you, and you don't like my icons, that's just immature. That's all there is to it.
I get that where he's coming from, this is how he thinks, but it's just clearly a ridiculous way of thinking.
No, it's the only way to think. The only way to think is with reference to an eternal, objective, absolute, and immutable standard. of truth. That's the only way to think. That's the only way to reason. That's the only way to argue. That's the only way. You can't, there's nothing you could say. If you want to grunt and roll around on the ground, that's just as good as an argument you could possibly make, because every argument you make proves my point.
Arguments imply free will.
Oh, yeah. This can't be the first time you've encountered that. This can't be the first time you've actually contemplated this. This can't be the first time you put 2 and 2 together. This can't be the first time. Seriously.
So the exact same criticism as before, which is that, well, it's clearly not an entailment. Like, arguments doesn't like contain the content of free will.
Yeah, it does. If you're not reasoning freely, you're not reasoning, period. I want you to, as a thought experiment, Nathan and all the atheists, so-called atheists out there listening to this, and there will be a couple, I want you to do a little thought experiment where you zoom out. You know, you've seen those movies where they freeze time and the action hero is like able to kill everyone or dodge the bullets and all this sort of crap, right? Freeze time, boom. Zoom in, look at all the quantum stuff. Zoom out, look at all the whole universe and the relativistic scale, everything. Zoom in, zoom out, scan it, travel around, and then let it roll forward in time, backward in time. Scan it. Scan all from beginning to end. If there's no beginning and there's no end in your worldview, then just scan, 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 scan infinitely fast to the past, infinitely fast forward. Just scan all that. Freeze again, zoom around, big, small, zoom in, zoom out. Let the time roll again. Play with it. This is the universe. It's the cosmos. It's all of the configurations of matter, energy in space-time. All of them. And if you want to zoom in on one particular piece here and compare it with another piece over there, good luck justifying that from your atheistic worldview. Good luck. I'd love to see you try. If any of you listening can come up with a justification, a philosophical justification for saying that one configuration is better than another, go for it.
This could still be compatibilist, right? So we'd still be free. But if you mean libertarian free will, you could have this causal deterministic picture where you bet humans on this view can be kind of like mechanistic automata, and they can have arguments which they sort of espouse and give to each other. And sometimes people are going to change their minds based on reason. Sometimes people are not going to change their mind.
Compatibilism is just hard determinism. It's hard determinism, people. And all they're doing is they're saying hard determinism is true, but you have all these feelings and desires, and sometimes your desires are frustrated, but sometimes they're not. And, wake up, people. Hard determinism, there's no freedom in hard determinism, okay? So when they talk about compatibilist free will, that's a it's one of those words, doesn't make sense. What the word is. There's free will or there's not. Okay, there's free will or there's not. Now, no one in their right mind would attribute absolute free will to a creature. That just, we're finite. We're not going to be without constraints. There are many constraints. Only God is perfectly free. Only God is absolutely free. And in heaven, if God willing we make it to heaven, we will be diving into that freedom, participating in that freedom, discovering that freedom, partaking more and more of that freedom as we become more and more united with God. That's what heaven is. But here below, for the most part, we're very, 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 very constrained. But that doesn't mean that we don't have free will, because if we don't have free will, then we don't have responsibility. There can be no praise, there could be no blame. There can only be the illusion of praise and blame, the illusion of merited praise and blame, the illusion of free will, the illusion of reasoning, the illusion of arguments, the illusion of value, the illusion of meaning, the illusion of love, the illusion of justice. It is a true dichotomy. There is free will or there is not. And it is self-evident that we have free will. Nathan, you have free will. Wake up.
That's clearly a consistent story, right?
No, it's not consistent. It's not consistent at all. Compatibilism is hard determinism. You're just pretending like you've smuggled in free will somehow. You haven't.
He's not giving us a valid argument if the conclusion that he's making is consistent with, if the premises that he's giving, right, arguments exist, are consistent with the counter conclusion that libertarian free will does not exist, and it is.
Okay, for the sake of argument, we'll say that your 500 arguments against Christianity are better than my single argument, counter argument against all of them. So you might be thinking, yay, that means I win. But no, you lose, because if one argument or one set of arguments is better than another argument or another set of arguments, you lose. You lose. If one configuration of matter energy in space-time is better than another, you lose. That's the dilemma that the atheist is faced with. You have to abandon meaning, you have to abandon everything that's meaningful for human beings if you want to claim to be an atheist. It's ridiculous.
Unless he's going to give us some kind of stronger argument or something that's actually valid.
So strong arguments are better than not so strong, and valid arguments are better than not so valid, right? You just lost. Again.
The etymological origins of a word have nothing to do with its current use and meaning.
Okay, so you believe you're an ape? That evolution is relevant and meaningful to who you are today, right? Okay, but the evolution, the so-called evolution of a word, its history and origin and how it changes, I take all that with a grain of salt. It's just interesting to note. I put the etymology in a comment on my video. It's just a bit of color. It's just a bit of color. We all know what an argument is. We're seeking the light. It's enlightenment that we're seeking. We're trying to enlighten ourselves or the other. It's that simple. If you want to say that argument no longer means approaching the truth and striving to reason and to come up with rational explanation, justifications for beliefs and these sorts of things, if you want to say that, then just come up with your definition. Tell me what your definition is. But if it's intelligible, you lose. You're better off grunting and groaning and just scratching your head. That's it. Because if you're going to communicate in a way that is intelligible, you've already lost.
It's not like by digging into the etymology of a word, you get into its essence or something in a way. Like this is like some weird sort of I'm saying weird because I'm annoyed at how sort of arrogant this guy started out, and I think he's being a muppet. But this sort of idea that by finding out about the historical origins of a word, I've got some secret extra knowledge about the essence of its meaning. But that's just not right. I mean, use and meaning changes over time. I mean, it might be interesting to find out about the etymology of a word, of its roots in various languages or whatever, but that doesn't tell me anything about what the appropriate use is in a linguistic community today.
This is all irrelevant. This is like, why are you talking about this so much? It's completely irrelevant. Like, words have meaning. Hello, words have meaning. And those meanings can change. Yes, those meanings can change. But the fact that words have meaning means that God exists and atheism is stupid and silly. That's it. End of conversation. But the fact that you're making an argument means that you're reasoning, and there is no reasoning without free will. Everyone knows this. Yeah, so he's going to respond to this. It was just had to play it for context.
Everyone knows this. Well, I'd say I know the opposite, right? Therefore, you're wrong.
Okay, so even though it's the most trite and silly argument, I know he's just being silly. But he's assuming meaning. He's assuming that arguments have different strengths, different measures of validity, soundness, and this sort of thing. He's assuming all of that. Doesn't do his worldview any favors.
Like, again, there's a need to actually argue here. And I don't mean just list. You don't have to, like, just talk in terms of syllogisms or something, but not providing any supporting reasons and merely, like, asserting these claims when it's really apparent that it's just obvious that there are different views that the vast majority of people in philosophy take if you read a Phil Papers survey. So it shows to me a complete lack of self-awareness to not be aware that one's in the minority with the views that they take.
The difference is not that you're self-aware and I'm not, Nathan. The difference is that I understand that I have a philosophical basis for my knowledge, my belief and knowledge, that one point of view is better than another. One argument's better than another. One way of reasoning is better than another. One point of view is better than another. I have a philosophical basis for that. I also have a philosophical basis for existence in the material world and the other. You don't have that. Okay? If you can't reason freely, if you can't weigh the options and come to a decision, a reasoned decision, this is what it means to reason. It means to look at the options and to select, using your free will to select among the options.
See, that's just not right. It could be completely mechanistic, right? And then you become aware of reasons, and then it's not like I it's, say if V comes in now and with, like, a big blue ball and just shoves it in my face, right? It's not like I then sort of sit back like in the Cartesian theatre of my mind, look at all the sensory apparatus and think, am I going to will to have a belief about that blue ball? Or it's not like, I don't know, there's tons of things I've not thought about in maths before. Like, I hadn't thought about the chain rule for ages, right? I hadn't thought about trigonometry for ages. And then this morning, I was doing something where I had to use the chain rule to differentiate a trigonometric function, right? And as I read the stuff on the page and as I kind of conceived of the way that these things fitted together, it wasn't like I saw a plausible candidate option for the correct way to, like, differentiate this thing and then volitioned myself to believe that that is true. It's like I just saw it and formed the belief. Like once I became aware of the relevant reasons, like reasons that I'd forgot for believing a particular thing, once I became aware of the relevant reasons, I just formed the belief, right, mechanistically. So
much to unpack here, but let's just keep it really, really brief. Okay, we don't apprehend the highest good directly. We have here in this finite fallen world, but just in the finite world suffices for the sake of this point, we have access to goods that are relatively good. They're not the absolute good. We don't have God. We don't have the beatific vision before us, and then we have to choose between heaven and hell. It becomes very, very clear. Same thing with the syllogism. We have that sort of absolute, clear proof, 1 + 1 = 2, or anything like that. Other examples of things where it's just obvious this is the way to go, and this is how there aren't a lot of options. But even when I studied math and physics at university, guess what? We got bonus points. You could get more than 100% on your exam, depending on how you came to that same correct, one and only correct answer. The same answer. Different people got the same answer, but the way they arrived at it was more or less elegant. Hello? So there's free will involved. There's creativity involved. It's not an absolute on or off thing. We have free will even when solving problems that have one and only one correct solution. So you need to step back and re-examine your evaluation of free will. Free will is not absolute for any of us creatures. It's absolute for God and for God alone.
The notion of possibility refutes atheism. It just depends how we cash it out. I mean, if you mean by possibility, like something about God, then that notion of possibility, but that might refute atheism. But I don't mean by possibility something about God or God's mind. So that notion of possibility doesn't refute atheism.
Just do the thought experiment. Zoom in, freeze time, zoom out, go through time, scan time, front to back, backwards and forwards, up and down. Travel around in this creation. Using your mind's eye. Travel around. Take a tour. Okay? And then once you've got this 4D object in your mind's eye, it's a model, it's imperfect, it lacks information, but you just fill in the gaps with your imagination based on your sense perceptions, what you've encountered. And there are objects, there's matter, energy, and all this sort of thing. Yeah, your model's not going to be 100% correct. That's not the point. The point is that we know that reality is manifest, and we know that things are in flux and changing, and we know there's space, time, and there's matter, energy. And you can have in your mind the idea of that 4-dimensional object called space-time. All the matter energy is there, all its shifting configurations over all time. Even if you want infinite time backwards and forwards, go for it. You can still hold that 4D object in your mind. Just like you can hold in your mind the concept of actual infinity. Try it. I'm doing it right now. Okay, so hold that 4D object, which is all of matter, energy, and space-time. Hold that in your mind. And then tell me with a straight face that you have a philosophical basis in your atheistic worldview. You have a philosophical basis for this notion of possibility. I'd love to hear that. Love to hear it. Never had an atheist even try. Give it a try. The only thing the atheist can do is say it is what it is, because hard determinism is the case.
The only thing the theist can do is say, I am what I am.
Yeah, your tit for tat doesn't work, because I just told you that we can have this thought experiment. We can have the 4D object, for lack of a better word, of all matter, energy, and space-time, all the shifting configurations. It's all there. Okay. The only thing that you can say, if you want to say something intelligible as an atheist, you're limited to this one statement. It is what it is. This 4D object, it just is what it is. It played out like this and this and this and that and this and that and the other thing. The matter bounced around like this and that and the other thing, and quantum effects and relativity and everything else. Okay? It did all these wonderful things and colors and flavors and smells and everything else. Okay? Put all of it in there, in this 4D object, which is all of matter, energy, in all of space-time. And your philosophical worldview, your atheism, your non-theism, allows you to say precisely one thing. It is what it is. You can't talk about possibilities. You can't talk about value, meaning, love, judgments, goodness, truth, beauty, justice. You can't talk about that. Not in a meaningful way. I will listen to you when you say it is what it is, but any other intelligible utterance is like the grunts of an ape. Let's put it that way.
It's just not true, because, I mean, for example, right, Cartesian souls could still exist with I don't think that libertarian free will is even a coherent concept.
Yeah, we're going to have to cut short these comments because we're spinning our wheels now. But basically what I would say is that you're indulging in theism whenever you're doing your little fantasies about all the different theories and possibilities and all that sort of thing. You're indulging in theism. You're riding on the fumes of your theism. If ever you were a Christian to begin with, but you are inherently a monotheist by nature. God created you. You have inherently within you the potential, at least, to deduct with certainty, without recourse to faith, without recourse to any faith-based beliefs, and without recourse to religion, without recourse to revelation, using pure reason, the light of natural reason, you are able to know with certainty that God exists. So you are a theist, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not. You have that potential. And that is the fundamental option. You have to decide, am I going to rebel against my creator? Am I going to rebel against God by denying his very existence? That's rude, to put it mildly. It's very rude.
But one could paint a picture of reality where one has libertarian free will and a Cartesian soul, whatever you want, and that interacts with natural reality. I mean, that's still simpler than all that plus God, right?
Nothing is simpler than God. God is absolutely simple. And the whole point of Occam's razor, if you want to bring that in, is that we don't multiply causes beyond what is necessary, right? So obviously the finite world is pretty complicated. The world of ideas in human culture is very complicated. It seems that way. We are not able to comprehend the unity of the attributes of God. We can't really comprehend. We can apprehend, but we can't comprehend the unity, the ontological unity of all the transcendentals and all the pure perfections of God, all the attributes of God. We can't comprehend it. It goes beyond our finite ability to reason, but we can apprehend it. And we can know it with certainty, even though we can't comprehend it. Just like you can't comprehend your free will, but you can't deny it, because in denying it, you're affirming it.
My point is just that atheism as a position is just to say it is just a particular kind of view of reality wherein God doesn't exist. It doesn't tell you anything else about this other stuff.
You joking? You joking? You don't think there are logical implications for your axiomatic assumptions? Give me a break.
I mean, theists are going to cash out the way that they sort of talk about metaphysics, where God presumably has some kind of working role in that model. But any kind of word where the meaning of it isn't God in that sort of entailment sense, or like containing the meaning of God or something, you're going to be able to kind of include those entities on a non-theistic picture of reality or an atheistic picture of reality.
Nonsense.
There's no way to get free will out of uncaused effects. Isn't that literally what agent causation is? An uncaused effect.
Nope. Nope. Our free will is the cause of a lot of natural effects. The conversation I'm having now with my computer, with myself, with you virtually, through the medium of this technology, a conversation that any two people have face to face, probably a better example. It is fundamentally caused by supernatural minds. Our minds are not natural. Our minds are not brains. Our minds are supernatural. Our minds have the ability to reason. That means they have the ability to reason freely. That's how we know that our minds are supernatural. I mean, just from pure reason, the natural light of reason, we know that reason is supernatural. Even though we can use a very grounded and pragmatic form of reasoning, like it's 8 a.m., I have to get up even though I don't want to, I have to go to work. You know, you can think of these very pragmatic decisions that are made. Or you could be in the mud doing your biological research and it all seems very grounded in the natural world in your laboratory and all this sort of thing. But every thought you have is supernatural. Every thought is supernatural. Every thought is supernatural. And every time you use reasoning, it is necessarily free reasoning. If it's not free reasoning, it's not reasoning. It's something else.
There's no antecedent cause to the volition of your will.
Are you joking? Well, for the atheist, I guess this is the conundrum, is that you just don't have an uncaused first cause, right? You don't have a first efficient cause or anything else. What do you have? What are your principles? What is the foundation of your worldview? Is it turtles all the way down? Really? That's... You got nothing. You got nothing. That just makes you look more and more ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you look ridiculous too. Like, right back at you, little man. Like, what? This is why I was getting annoyed at the start, because he's just being a muppet.
If my niece came to me and said, "Oh, I tried heroin, it's amazing, you really should try it, it's the best," and this and that, I'd be like, you're being stupid. You're selling your soul cheap if you're going to these orgies and doing cocaine and heroin and all these things that you think are so pleasurable and so highbrow and sophisticated and all the cool kids are there. You're a loser. You're a loser. Wake the hell up, right? That's not health, that's not beauty, that's not life, that's not good. That's not truth. You've been fooled. Okay? You've been fooled. You're a fool. Wake up.
I personally don't believe in libertarian free will because I don't think it makes any sense as a concept. Like, I don't even understand what it could mean.
Yeah, so you are the ultimate judge. You are the Pope. You are God Almighty in your little empire. Okay? So this idea doesn't get the stamp of approval from Nathan. So no. Doesn't make sense to me. That's weird, you know. That goes in the dumb pile. Dumb ideas. Okay, free will, that's stupid. So congratulations. Enjoy your reign. It's a very, very brief reign, let me assure you. It's a very, very brief glory that you're enjoying here. Enjoy it while you can.
But I believe in free will in the compatibilist sense. I just mean something slightly different.
Slightly different? No, it's infinitely different. You have free will or you don't. Compatibilist free will is hard determinism. I believe in free will. There's an infinite difference between my worldview in terms of free will and your worldview in terms of free will. Infinite difference. It's not a slight difference. Infinite.
You know, namely a coherent concept, right, of what it is to be free.
If you think it's coherent to deny love, reason, anything that humans traditionally found valuable and meaningful, including value and meaning, is that not too high a price to pay for your alleged coherent worldview with respect to free will? Don't you think you're paying just a little bit too high of a price? I think so. I think you should reevaluate your life choices.
Which is to do the thing that I desire.
So you have this subjective experience of desire. So it's hard determinism, but I get the feeling of desire. Sometimes my desires are fulfilled. Sometimes they're frustrated. But when they're fulfilled, my choice comes to me. I get the result that I desired. Congratulations. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And then that also makes sense with like normal, with other sort of senses of free as well that we might talk about, where the state might impose, you know, some kind of constraints on you, which mean that you can't do something, and you say, you know, that person isn't free anymore.
Should I really have to explain this again? We're not absolutely free. We're not gods. We're creatures. We're finite. When I say I have free will, it doesn't mean that government doesn't impose constraints on my life. It doesn't mean my wife doesn't impose constraints on my life.
Yeah, rhetoric point. If you start out annoyed when you watch a clip, you seem a bit unhinged. I get your own. So I am unhinged, Oscar, because life's tough in the hood.
I have sympathy for this guy, Nathan. He seems like a sweet guy, sensitive guy, an intelligent guy, and a warm and likable, affable guy. He's self-deprecating. He's got that low self-esteem happening, which I find endearing. It's a very Canadian attribute, characteristic. So I like this guy. He doesn't like me, but it's because I'm an annoying prick, apparently. But I mean, he's not the first to point that out, and just always chalk it up to my Scottish heritage.
Because I am self-aware, I can understand how, from his point of view, where we're special metaphysical beings that Mummy cares about, it is actually going to be really upsetting to say that we're apes. But from my point of view, I'm just like, yeah, like that's as obvious as saying like I've got hands, right?
Yeah, well, you don't have a philosophical basis, much less an empirical basis for your belief that you have hands. Okay, that's number one. And I am loved by Mommy, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Daddy, God Almighty, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I am special. I am loved. I am loved as though no other creature existed. If you had really ever loved Jesus Christ, then you would know exactly what I'm talking about. And the fact that you don't understand it makes me think, makes me suspect that probably you never loved your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I hope I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
So it's not this sort of reductio that he thinks it is, to say like they're going to admit that we're actually apes. It's like, yeah.
I don't need a reductio. I just need to know that there is something called the principle of proportionate causality. You can't give what you don't have. You can't give what you don't have. Do that 4D examination of all configurations of matter, energy, and space-time throughout all space and time. Hold that in your mind. And look at your story of evolution, whether it's cosmic evolution or the evolution of from non-life to life, or the evolution of life species morphing and evolving and expanding and changing. Look at all that. Okay, examine that objectively. And tell me if there's a philosophical basis, much less an empirical natural science basis, for saying that non-life can turn into life, and that one form of relatively simple life can change into more complex forms of life. Ask yourself, is there a philosophical basis, much less an empirical basis, for your belief? There isn't. There is not. You have a fantasy, you have a story, you have a carefully concocted lie. That's all you have if you believe in evolution theory, different theories of evolution, whether it's theistic evolution or the secular versions of evolution. Things do change. Obviously, from parents to child, you're going to see changes. But you don't go from an ape to a human. It just cannot happen. Because apes have an ape nature and humans have, wait for it, a human nature. And if you're willing to abandon the notion of nature, that things have an essence, a nature, if you're willing to abandon that, you're not left with much. I can tell you, I can give you a little hint of what you're left with. It's a catchphrase. It's the only intelligible thing that you really should be bold enough to utter, and that is, it is what it is. It is what it is. So it's hard to take the atheist seriously. It really is hard to take the atheist seriously. And it's the same.
The atheist. It's hard to take you seriously.
Yeah. Okay, so Nathan took exception to the definite article there, the atheist. He doesn't think that he should take me seriously with my point of view. How about you just think about your own worldview? You just think about, how about you examine your faith-based beliefs? How about you try to justify to yourself, if not to me, but justify to yourself evolution, your belief in the other and the material universe. Just as a little homework exercise, I think it might be good to do that before we talk next, because I'd like to have you on my live stream. I'd like to come on your live stream, whichever works better for you. If that freaks you out and you just rather avoid me for the rest of your life, then so be it. That will become evident as time goes by. I'll keep inviting you, and then there'll be crickets, but if you do want to confront your most cherished but unexamined assumptions, then I'm your man.
I mean, with that Plandemic t-shirt on, and like, let's just ad hominem away.
The reason I wore this shirt is because it says "My body, my choice." That's got to be the most left-wing shirt I've ever worn. When I bought this shirt, I bought the shirt for my wife. I wore it, I think I wore it to some event or something. But the reason that I accept this part of the shirt up top says Plandemic instead of pandemic is not because I buy into the right-wing conspiracy theories. I don't. I'm not stupid. I already have a religion. I'm Catholic. I'm not a right-wing guy. I'm Catholic. I think the right wing is stupid and evil. Right? I love and respect the humans on the right. I love and respect the humans on the left. I'm surrounded by lefties. I don't know any right-wing people in real life. Maybe one slightly right of center friend. Okay? I'm surrounded by people on the left. Moderate left, extreme left. For most of my life, I was moderate left. Now I'm Catholic. And if I lean, I mean, I've done tests online, political landscape. Where do I fall? I fall dead center. Because I don't believe the hype. I don't believe the hype of the left, that it's okay to kill your baby in the womb. I don't believe the hype of the right, that Pope Francis is the Antichrist or whatever it is, or that all politicians are drinking the blood of children. I mean, it could be true, but I highly doubt it. But this idea of plandemic, I like it because the issue for me, if you haven't figured it out yet, the issue for me is usually centered on free will. And the principle of subsidiarity in my religion teaches that power must flow to the lowest possible application of power. That we give authority to the smallest, lowest level of authority whenever possible. Individuals do have rights and freedoms and, of course, obligations. And, of course, we do have a valid municipal, provincial, or state and federal and even potentially world government. There's a place for government. I'm not an anarchist. My church does not promote one form of government over against another, but there is a principle. And that principle is subsidiarity. There are other principles too, like the principle of life. You cannot kill the elderly just because it's convenient and it will save the government a lot of money. We cannot kill the disabled just because it's convenient and it might save them some discomfort and pain. We cannot kill the children in the womb just because they're missing a chromosome or they're defective in some way, or it's inconvenient, it would cost too much money, or the parents might not be ideal parents, or whatever the case may be, or the mother was raped. We cannot kill a child in the womb because that child was conceived in rape. So, plandemic, what that means to me is there's a pandemic today, and like Pope Francis said, gossip is a worse disease. It's a worse virus today than SARS-CoV-2. Gossip is more deadly. It's more regrettable. It's more pernicious. It's more evil. It's more prevalent. So another evil that's running wild is the planning that's taking place. People are planning for me. They're making health choices for me, and they're making choices for me. I'm an individual. I have a certain amount of autonomy because I have free will, and I have the dignity that comes from the fact that I am created. My soul is created out of nothing, ex nihilo, at the moment of conception in my mother's womb. My parents didn't create me, they procreated my body, and God created at the moment of conception my soul. So I'm a person comprised of body and soul, as are all living humans on planet Earth before death. After death, there's a separation of the soul and the body. So the planning that goes into what we could call a plandemic is an overreach of governments. Conservative governments, centrist governments, left-wing governments, socialists, communists, fascists, Republicans, Democrats, Conservative Party of Canada, New Democratic Party of Canada, Liberal Party of Canada, whatever the case may be. There is an overreach. So I'm very comfortable, even though I don't subscribe to every use of the word plandemic. In particular, we could think right away of some extreme right-wing conspiracy theories, right? I don't subscribe to those, but there is a plandemic. There's a plandemic. People are violating the principle of subsidiarity, and they're planning things that they shouldn't be planning. They're orchestrating things that shouldn't be orchestrated. They're making their business things that are none of their business. If my rebellion against that strikes you as right-wing, then so be it. You've got your biases. I can't help you. I can assure you, I'm not right-wing. I'm not left-wing. I'm a human being with a human nature, God-given rights and dignities. So let's continue. When I first interviewed Nathan, he was claiming...
In a cult.
So Nathan's trying to save face. He's trying to say, look guys, that was... It's an emotional thing. I was a psychotic episode or whatever. Joined a cult because I was vulnerable or depressed or whatever. I don't know what his reasons are. I don't know. But if he's saying flippantly and sarcastically that he belonged to a cult, what he's trying to do is say, look, guys, I wasn't in my right mind when I claimed to be a Christian. I wasn't thinking straight. Okay. Oh, remember that time I joined the cult? Oh, but I'm cool now. I'm one of the pack now. I'm on that peak of the normal curve when it comes to seeking truth, when it comes to ontology. I'm a naive realist, just like you guys. I just seems like the world and the other exists, so let's go with it. Oh, seems like we have morality, and there's no God. No, obviously, right? There's no God. It seems to be a morality. Oh yeah, I can make choices, but everything's hard to determine. But I'm still free. But talk about corruption. I'm talking about a pandemic here where governments are overreaching. You're overreaching as an individual. When you sell out and you say, oh, I plead temporary insanity. I wasn't really Christian, guys. I'm cool. Okay. You're corrupt. That's what you are. You're corrupt. You've sold out. The second time we chatted, he had recourse to what I call inordinate agnosticism, where... Yeah, well, I don't have to talk too much about this. I mean, when you deny things that we can know with certainty, then your agnosticism is just a cozy little hiding place. That's all it is. It's just a way to hide. That's all it is at that point.
this is where the creepy Catholic cult stuff starts coming in, like inordinate. You know how creepy.
Only those things that are faith-based, but he doubted at that time. This is back in February of 2020. At that time, he was doubting everything. He was not certain of anything but the fact that he is a being that has experiences. So when Nathan says that I'm creepy, and that this creepiness is a Catholic creepiness, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, the inordinate agnosticism has nothing to do with my Catholicism. That's just as as a generic monotheist, which I was, because I hated Christianity. I did not want to be a Christian. But on that journey between hard solipsism and Catholicism, there were several stops. The first stop, of course, was generic monotheism. And then there was some toying with Islam and Greek Orthodoxy and these sorts of things. But my point here is that as a generic monotheist, using pure reason only, having abandoned all of my faith-based beliefs by the application of radical doubt, I was in a position then to say what I'm saying right now. So don't tell me that my labeling your agnosticism, or your prior agnosticism at least, during my second interview of you when you were claiming to be agnostic at that time, when I label it inordinate, that's got nothing to do with my Catholic worldview. That's just using pure reason. There are things that we can know with certainty without faith-based beliefs that you were denying at that time when you were calling yourself an agnostic, and when you specified to me, when pressed on the issue, you specified to me that the one and only thing you could not deny is that you are a being that has experiences.
Now, because I have actually progressed and learned more philosophy, I think that that's a bad way to do epistemology, and an even worse way to do metaphysics.
No, it's the best way. The best way, and what he's talking about there is my application of radical doubt, going through hard solipsism. And he was, during his second interview with me, a de facto hard solipsist, because he said the only thing that he knew with certainty was, I am. And of course, the experiences that go with that being, that brute fact of being per se being, as I call it. It's the best way. Now, did he cave in? Did he cave in and go back to a naive realism and just give up, shrug the shoulders? Obviously, he's not a monotheist. There are two ways to go from hard solipsism. You could just say, who knows, go along to get along, put myself in the middle of the pack, and don't rock the boat, just be normal. You compromise, you're corrupt. You had a golden opportunity. It's the best way to build epistemology is by having a well-grounded ontology. There could be no epistemology without ontology. The first principle is always life. You don't have any rights. You don't have any other rights if you don't have the right to life. And when you're a hard solipsist, you know that the one and only reality that you can know with certainty is I am. Until you start using the application of pure reason to escape from your hard solipsism. Descartes helped with that. St. Augustine helped with that. My own existential angst motivated me very powerfully to reason my way out of hard solipsism. It's not a pleasant place to be, but I think that Nathan, I think that you were not truly in hard solipsism. I don't think you've ever been there. I think you went to a soft solipsism where, yeah, your naive realism was always intact. You had never really doubted. You hadn't given up your faith-based beliefs, no matter how childish and unfounded. You clung to them, and that's why you're calling yourself an atheist now. Maybe I haven't quite nailed the exact motivations and the path, but one thing is undeniable. You're not a monotheist today. You're not claiming to be a monotheist today. You're in grave danger of burning in hell for all eternity. Because when you had the chance to confront being, per se being, you caved. You just wanted to be normal, just wanted to be a normal guy. Apparently, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Per se being, I'm not sure that. Let me see. Per se, by or in themselves intrinsically. In itself intrinsically being. Maybe that could make sense.
Is this the first time that you've really thought? Oh my God. Is this the first time you thought about per se being? Is this the first time you thought about intrinsic being in and of itself? My mind is blown. My mind is blown. I mean, this is fundamental stuff. This is ontology 101. This is metaphysics 101. It's rash, reckless, and irresponsible to build any system of epistemology without confronting per se being. It's ridiculous.
I can grant you being in and of itself, and on naturalism, right? I can just naturalize that concept, which I think is pretty plausible, actually.
Yeah, just you got your little toy, your 4D object, which is all the configurations of matter, energy, and all of space-time. Actual infinity, or just a limited sequential infinity, or whatever, or just finite. Whatever it is, you've got that. I've walked you through this thought experiment. It is, for the atheist, it is what it is, period.
I don't understand.
Okay.
I don't understand why that's got anything to do with theism or Christianity or Yahweh or cutting your foreskin off or eating crackers and drinking wine.
Ah, interesting. So he's bringing up now the stepwise progression towards Catholicism from hard solipsism, where you confront per se being, and then using pure reason without recourse to any faith-based beliefs or any revelation or any religion, you become a monotheist using the natural light of reason alone. And then from there, of course, you have the belief now, the well-founded certain knowledge and belief in the existence of God. So there's theism. And then you've got history, which all of the monotheistic religions talk about the Messiah. Who is the Messiah? When's he going to come? Did he come? Was Jesus the Messiah? Yes or no? And was Jesus nailed to the cross? Yes or no? Was it, this is not rocket science, people. It's like you got three stories, basically. Oh, we're still waiting for the Messiah. It wasn't Jesus. He wasn't the real one. Okay, that's Judaism. Then you got Christianity. Yeah, the Messiah came. I mean, there are no more sacrifices in the temple. Like, this is it. The priesthood's gone. It's like Catholicism is the fulfillment. Christianity is the fulfillment of Judaism. And then you got Islam. Oh, well, Jesus, he's a great prophet, the second greatest prophet, and he's the Messiah in a certain sense, and he might come back and all this sort of things, but he didn't die on the cross, and Muhammad's the greatest and last prophet, etc., and so on and so forth. This is not rocket science. We just need to look at history, evaluate this question of the Messiah. It's not hard to realize that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, right? And then once you're a Christian, the question of authority. Where do we get the Bible? Is the Bible reliable? Is the Bible inerrant? Is the canon infallible? This is not difficult. And the principle of proportionate causality comes into this at this third and final stage, where you say, well, you can't give what you don't have. So if the church that gave us the canon was not infallible in some way, in a limited way, in a very specific negative way, meaning that the Holy Spirit protects the church from teaching error concerning faith and morals when done in a formal and specific way within constraints. If the church is not infallible in that way or in some way, then the canon cannot be infallible. And then so you don't have certainty about the inerrancy of the scriptures. And it is a dogma of the church that the canon of scripture, all the scriptures are inerrant in toto and in all of their parts. There's no error of any kind. It's not limited to questions of faith and morals. It's not limited to questions of faith and morals. The inerrancy of scripture is not limited. I'll say it a third time. It's not limited to questions of faith and morals. The entire canon of scripture is inerrant. Okay. Is that mind-boggling? Yes, it is. I've read the Bible, all 73 books from cover to cover, at least a couple dozen times since my conversion in 2009. Does it make sense? Am I comfortable with all of it? Is it intuitive? No. It's a hot mess, most of it. And I'm talking mostly Old Testament here, but even some stuff in the New Testament. It's mind-boggling for a stupid sinner like me. But I get little glimpses. And the principles that I bring to Christianity, the principles that I bring to Catholicism are unshakable because they are grounded not on faith, but on reason. So, end of rant. Once you've confronted that, you've been overwhelmed by the weight of that existentially, then you can use pure reason. If you have your wits about you, you can use pure reason to discover that you are not, in fact, the source of your own existence, therefore God. So even agnosticism is proof.
Well, I don't think I'm the source of my own existence.
Because it's turtles all the way down, right? Give me a break. I mean, this is not challenging. This is Metaphysics 101. Look around you. What do you see? Do you see the beatific vision irresistibly drawing you to monotheism? Or do you see a bunch of moderate intermediate goods that are competing for your attention and for your volition? And you have to reason and pick and choose among these relative goods. Right? And all of these goods, are they necessary in their being, or are they contingent, radically contingent in their being, dependent on other beings, other contingent beings? And if so, are they contingent in an infinite progression? Just think about it. It's just this is not rocket science, folks. We know that there is a first cause, an uncaused first cause, and that's what we call God. We can know using the natural light of reason without recourse to faith or supernatural revelation. We can know, if we have our wits about us, many of the attributes, not all, but many of the attributes of the uncaused first cause. So you are without excuse. You are without excuse.
I think I'm composed of parts of stuff that I didn't cause and couldn't cause.
Gee, you think? This is not rocket science, folks. You can either have an infinite regress of causes, you can have a circle of causes, or you can have an uncaused first cause. Which seems most reasonable to you? By the way, an infinite regress of causes and effects is necessarily a circle of causes. So we can clump those two together and we can rule them both out, bam, right away. Why? Because the principle of causality, we can never have an effect preceding its own cause. And that's what a circle of cause and effect necessarily implies. Because on a circle, there's no preferred privileged position. So the effect is always before the cause, which is before the effect, which is before the cause, and so on and so forth. There's no privileged position on a circle. So you know, you have the ability, if you have your wits about you, you have the ability, the capability of concluding, by the light of natural reason, without recourse to any faith-based beliefs, that God exists. So get over yourself, stop reading all your books, stop babbling on about all these fantasies, all these wonderful, intricate stories about evolution and about compatibilist free will, so-called, and all the rest of that nonsense. It's all wasting your time, and you will, trust me, you will regret it. If you continue barking up that tree, you will regret it. I'm here as an agent of God to tell you, to warn you, to stop messing around. This is not rocket science. You have what it takes to know God, to love God, and to serve God in this life, and then you could be happy with God forever in the next life. So what are you waiting for? Why are you messing around? Everything is proof of the existence of God.
Everything is proof of the existence of God. So it's not... why say anything then? Because there's no need to, right? Because there's literally nothing that can be said that isn't proof of the existence of God.
Yeah, well, you need to learn. You, Nathan, you have been fooled and you are on a one-way trip to hell unless someone like me, as an angel, an instrument of God, an instrument bringing actual grace to you for your conversion, unless I intervene and people like me intervene and pray for you, talk to you, reason with you, unless that happens and unless you make the effort to turn your life around, you're destined for a fate worse than death. Sorry to use scary language. This is serious. Life is not a joke. And God will not be mocked. But it's not too late. I'm not going to lose any sleep over your eternal destiny, over the eternal destiny of the atheists in my own family. I'm not going to lose any sleep because I know that God cares for each of us as if we were the only creature that he made. And he's giving us sufficient grace for our conversion. So it's just a matter of time for you. It's just a matter of time. And if you do end up saying no to God and burning in hell, that's your choice. That's your choice. But don't say I didn't warn you. Don't say that I didn't warn you. Everything. I don't want to belabor the point here. I'm going to...
It's not inconsistent with anything. There's no need to argue for it. Just everything. Just that and this and nothing and everything. And it just means God. You can't, like, this. Look, this is like hay fever nose wax. Like, me licking it. Like, that is God. It means God. It entails God. Logically and inescapably. Premise one, therefore God.
Yeah, you're finally getting it. Everything entails the necessary existence of God. Everything. That little theater you did with licking the nose product, whatever it was. Did you do it freely? Was there any meaning to it? Is your point that you're making meaningful? Is the argument that you're using that theater in, you're incorporating some business, some theater into your argument? Is your argument better than my arguments? If so, then welcome to monotheism, buddy. And if not, so what? Who cares? By your own admission, you're not free, and the judgments you make have zero value because they're subjective, they're mired in relativism, they're here today, gone tomorrow, and they're changeable, they're in a constant state of flux for the short period of time that they endure. Is that what you want to say? Because those are the two options you have.
They don't deserve to be refuted. Oh, yes, Daddy, spank me harder. Like, what is this? Some kind of like kinky domination shaming thing?
I haven't read any fairy tales lately, but usually it involves rescuing the innocent from the dragon, okay? And the innocent is often in a sort of Stockholm syndrome. You can see this in the Narnia Chronicles. There's a sort of some scales on the eyes that haven't fallen off yet, and the climax and the whole point of the story is for those scales to fall from the eyes of the innocent once the dragon has been slain or contained. And the beloved innocent is taken back to humanity. Wow. Back to the family. Wow. Imagine that. There's a human nature. There's something called intimacy, sex, marriage, family. Imagine that. I wonder what your philosophical basis would be for those notions. Ridiculous.
I mean, as far as I remember, there's one that's logically invalid. So there's 499 that are logical, right?
No, I'm not. I haven't said anything about the particular arguments. I'm saying the fact of arguing. The fact of arguing against God, the fact of arguing for atheism or for non-theism, that fact, that act is irrational. It goes against reason, it goes against logic, it goes against truth, it goes against goodness, it goes against beauty, it goes against justice, it goes against mercy, it goes against health, it goes against all of the pure perfections. Okay? So I'm not talking about the individual arguments. I'll get to those. I'm going to do a series of videos picking them apart. It's going to be painful. It's going to be repetitive. But I'll start and I'll see how it goes.
Again, you're probably using some idiosyncratic meaning of logic to just mean God, because everything means God, just like possibility means God and argument means God, right? But whenever I've used the term logic, I mean these formal systems of these formal systems of inference, right?
Do you have any evidence for your belief that every belief must be evidence-based? Like, this is a typical one I use on the atheist. I don't know if Nathan falls into this particular camp, but there are a lot of atheists claiming that, oh, well, I only believe things I have evidence for. Well, do you have evidence for the things that form the axiomatic beliefs upon which you build? Do you even know what your most fundamental axiomatic assumptions are? Do you even know? Are you even aware of what they are? If you want to talk about logic, we need to know, what is your system built on, right? Because if your foundation is on shifting sand, it doesn't matter if your syllogisms have proper form. It does not matter. Okay, so go beyond your superficial analysis of philosophy and academia. It's bullshit. Excuse my language, but it's bullshit. It's all bullshit. And you're going to suffer because of that bullshit. You're going to suffer for all eternity unless you wake up and repent. And silly and stupid. Okay.
Well, you're silly and stupid, so there.
I wasn't saying that he himself is silly and stupid. I'm saying that it's that if you listen to what I said, I didn't include it just because I don't want to include myself there, but I'm talking about this. I think what I'm talking about there is the attempt to smuggle in free will by using indeterminacy, so-called, and quantum effects and all this nonsense. Randomness, basically uncaused effects. That's silly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say, even if you're an atheist or if you've never kind of heard this stuff before, to really just revisit some of maybe these philosophical proofs, maybe certainly the Bible, what the Gospels have to say. Just read them and see what it speaks to your heart, and what have you got to lose.
Okay, so let's critique me. Read them. Well, firstly, philosophical arguments, right? Do they speak to your heart? No, it's reason, right? Secondly, is what it speaks to your heart a good method for getting to truth? Okay. Now, let's say I read the Book of Mormon and it speaks to my heart. Let's say I read the Quran and it speaks to my heart, right? Do I become a Mormon? Do I become a Muslim? And these are reasons that are given by people with contradictory worldviews as to why they believe these things. It is clearly not a reliable way for coming to true beliefs, whether or not something speaks to your heart, right? It doesn't track truth speaking to the heartness.
It's kind of like Pascal's wager. If God is there, maybe he'll speak to your heart and maybe it'll change your life like it has done mine.
Oh, Nathan, you're so annoyed with yourself. You're so embarrassed by yourself. It is comical to watch. We're all, we're just human. Get over yourself. We're just human. We make mistakes. We're foolish. We're selfish. We stink. Have you ever noticed? We stink. You ever gone into a pharmacy and looked at all the products that have to do with odors? You can rinse your mouth with mouthwash because your breath stinks. You can brush your teeth because your breath stinks. You can get underarm deodorant because your armpits stink. There are products for the nether regions for women and even for men now. That line being blurred all the time by Satan and his minions between what is a man, what is a woman. Is there a human nature? Is there a nature, male nature, female nature? But if you go into a pharmacy, you'll see that, we're weak and we stink. So get over yourself. Okay? This is temporary. We're only in this fallen world for a little bit. So don't worry about how stupid you are. Don't worry about that. Okay? It's not about you in this fallen state. It's not about you, how embarrassing your worldview was or is or could be. It's not about that. It's about God, the Creator, how good He is, and how you participate even now to a limited degree in His perfections, some of His perfections. You don't have them eminently. You don't enjoy His sovereignty. You don't enjoy the absolute objective per se being that God enjoys. But you're invited. You're invited into the life of the Trinity. And guess what? It's better than the alternative. Wake up.
Yeah, so we can see the pandemic shirt, the man bun, and the icons. Classic strange person.
Yeah. So it's true. I must admit, he really nailed me with some zingers there at the end. Okay. Really nailed me because my shirt says pandemic. Ooh, what does that mean? Well, I already explained that. I got my hair in a man bun. Okay. He has literally spent more time thinking about and worrying about my hair in that one comment than I have in 37 years. Or whatever it's been, since 1987. Do the math. I'll do the math here. Okay. 2021 minus 1987. 34 years since I've thought about, how does my hair look? How should I style my hair? Oh, should I go get a haircut? Oh, what? Should I dye my gray hairs? I don't think about that stuff. Okay. For 34 years, I've been free. Free. And ironically, I mean, it's not because I'm not vain. I am vain. But it's just like that one form of vanity. I just don't indulge. I don't have time for that stuff. I try to minimize my hygiene. I wash my hair once a week. Any less than that, and my head just gets itchy. Any more than that, I just feel like I'm wasting time. Okay? So it's a non-issue. And ironically, it was a bit of an issue for him because he talks about his hair here.
James just sent me... Oh, my hair looks goofy as fuck. But James just...
So... he's talking about how goofy his hair looks on camera. Like, do you project much, buddy? Do you project onto people your own psychological foibles? You should maybe go see a shrink, because I don't worry about my hair. I don't think about my hair. Okay? Now, as for the icons here, they are permitted by the church. There was an iconoclast controversy, and that's a settled issue. It's a dogmatic truth from God through the instrumentality of the church that the God-man Jesus Christ instituted when he was on earth. It's a God-given truth that we are allowed to revere these images. It's not the image that we're worshiping. We're worshiping God and the saints by way of the image. The same way that you have loved ones and you may have an image of them. It's irrelevant if it's digital or it's on paper, what kind of paper it's on, in the frame made out of wood or gold or silver, or what, it doesn't matter. You're not in love with the frame, you're not in love with the glass, you're not in love with the paper, you're not in love with the digital device on which your image appears. You're in love with the person. So on that note, I think you need to grow up, and I think you need to wake up. And I wish you well. I'm praying for you. I have a mass being said for you, Nathan, every day. Since your first interview back in 2019, every day, infinite graces of the mass flooding you. And that will be a source of torture, ongoing torture, if you don't say yes eventually before your death. If you don't say yes to those graces, convert, it's going to be just that much more torture. So I'm your best friend or your worst enemy because of these graces that are flooding you daily. It's up to you to choose. I mean, I know which way I want you to go because I love you. I love you as I love myself because I'm Christian. I want the same thing for you. that I want for myself. That's why I put 2 hours and 15 minutes of my life to tell you, wake up before it's too late. So that's it. Take care. We'll talk soon.